The arrival. The crystalline spires of Xinan University glittered in the light of three suns, their iridescent surfaces refracting a kaleidoscope of colors across the campus grounds. It was orientation day, and the air buzzed with excitement as new students from across the galaxy arrived to begin their studies in advanced xenobiology. Professor Zixlith, a towering insectoid being with compound eyes that shimmered like opals, stood at the entrance of the grand lecture hall. His mandibles clicked nervously as he watched the diverse array of alien life forms file into the room. There were gaseous entities that floated like sentient clouds, silicon-based creatures that clinked and clattered as they moved, and even a group of hive-minded organisms that flowed as one amorphous mass. But it was the last student to enter that made Zixlith's exoskeleton vibrate with apprehension. The human stood out like a supernova in a sea of dim stars. While most species in the galaxy had evolved to be passive, cautious, and specialized, humans came from a planet so fraught with danger that it was classified as a death world. Their adaptability and resilience made them both fascinating and terrifying to the rest of the galactic community. The human, a female named Alex Chen, strode into the room with a confidence that seemed at odds with her small stature. She carried a large, pulsating container that hummed with barely contained energy. The alien students nearest to her instinctively recoiled, their survival instincts screaming danger. "Welcome, welcome," Zixlith chittered, trying to maintain his composure. "I see we have quite a diverse class this year. Please, introduce yourselves and share a little about your background in xenobiology." One by one, the students spoke. There was Gloop, a gelatinous being from the swamp planet Mire, who could absorb and analyze organic matter through its membrane. Sin and Sen, binary stars given sentience through advanced technology, shared their experience in studying extremophiles that thrived in stellar atmospheres. The Hive Mind Collective, calling itself Unity, expressed its interest in studying symbiotic relationships between species. When it was Alex's turn, she stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Hi everyone, I'm Alex Chen from Earth. I've always been fascinated by the diversity of life in the universe, but I have a particular interest in creatures that others might consider dangerous." A ripple of unease passed through the classroom. Zixlith's antennae twitched. "And what, may I ask, is in that container you've brought with you, Alex?" Alex's smile widened. "Oh, this is my pet and research subject. His name is Fluffy." Before anyone could object, Alex pressed a button on the container. With a hiss of decompression, the lid opened, and something emerged that defied description and sent waves of terror through the alien students. Fluffy was a nightmare-given flesh. It had the sleek, predatory body of a large feline, but its skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns that shifted and swirled hypnotically. 6 limbs, each ending in razor-sharp claws, supported its muscular frame. Its head was a bizarre fusion of reptilian and mammalian features, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of reality. A mane of what looked like living flames danced around its neck, and a tail that appeared to be made of pure energy lashed back and forth. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Gloop lost cohesion and splattered across the floor. The hive mind Unity scattered into its individual components, each tiny organism scrambling for safety. Sin and San dimmed so dramatically they nearly winked out of existence. Even Professor Zixlith found himself backing away, his wings instinctively unfolding in preparation for flight. But Alex stood calmly beside the creature, seemingly oblivious to the pandemonium around her. She reached out and scratched behind what might generously be called Fluffy's ears. To everyone's astonishment, the terrifying beast leaned into her touch and emitted a sound that was part purr, part subsonic rumble. "It's okay," Alex said soothingly, addressing both Fluffy and her terrified classmates. "He's perfectly safe. Well, as safe as any apex predator from a death world can be." Professor Zixlith, gathering what remained of his courage, managed to speak. "Miss Chen, When we asked students to bring a specimen for study, we were expecting something less lethal. Alex looked genuinely surprised. But Professor, you said to bring the most interesting specimen we could find. Fluffy here is a perfect example of convergent evolution and adaptive radiation on Earth. He's a genetically engineered hybrid of several apex predators, combined with some bioluminescent deep-sea creatures and a dash of extremophile bacteria for good measure. The professor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. And you control this creature? Alex nodded enthusiastically. Of course, humans have a long history of domesticating dangerous animals. Fluffy here is just the latest in a long line of unlikely animal companions. As if to demonstrate, Alex turned to Fluffy and said firmly, "Sit." The creature, which moments ago had seemed capable of devouring stars, obediently lowered its haunches to the floor. Its tail, still crackling with energy, curled neatly around its feet. Slowly, cautiously, the alien students began to recover from their initial shock. Curiosity, that driving force that had brought them all to Sinan University in the first place, began to overcome their fear. Gloop reformed itself, a pseudopod extending tentatively towards Fluffy. "Fascinating," it burbled. "The energy readings I'm getting from this creature are off the charts. How does its metabolism function?" Unity, its individual components reassembling, vibrated with excitement. The collective wishes to understand the training methods used to control such a formidable entity. Even Sin and San brightened, their stellar bodies pulsing with renewed interest. The bioluminescent properties are remarkably similar to certain cosmic phenomena we have observed. Is there a connection? Professor Zixlith watched in amazement as his class, which moments ago had been on the verge of total panic, now crowded around Alex and Fluffy, their fear transformed into scientific curiosity. He realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented, a moment that could change the course of galactic scientific understanding. "Very well, Miss Chin," he said, his own scientific interest overcoming his instinctive caution. "I believe you have quite a lesson to teach us all. Please, tell us more about your pet." Alex beamed, clearly in her element. As she began to explain the intricacies of Fluffy's biology and the challenges of caring for such a creature, the alien students listened with rapt attention. Fluffy, for his part, seemed to bask in the attention, his bioluminescent patterns creating mesmerizing displays. In that moment, on the first day of class at Sinan University, a new chapter in interspecies understanding was being written. And at the center of it all was a human girl and her impossible pet, redefining the very concept of dangerous for a galaxy that had yet to fully comprehend the potential of life from a death world. The demonstration. As the initial shock of Fluffy's appearance began to wear off, Professor Zixlith realized that his carefully planned first day of class had been completely derailed. However, he was nothing if not adaptable, a trait necessary for any xenobiologist worth their salt. "Well, Miss Chin," he chittered, mandibles clicking thoughtfully, "since you've captured everyone's attention so thoroughly, perhaps you'd like to give us a demonstration of your pet's abilities." Alex's face lit up with enthusiasm. "I'd love to, Professor. What would you like to see?" The alien students, still maintaining a cautious distance, began to murmur amongst themselves. Gloop, having fully reconstituted itself, raised a pseudopod. "If I may, I'm curious about its physical capabilities. How does it compare to other Earth predators?" Alex nodded, turning to Fluffy with a mischievous grin. "All right, boy. Let's show them what you can do. Agility course." To everyone's amazement, Fluffy's body tensed, its bioluminescent patterns shifting to a deep, pulsing blue. In a blur of motion that left afterimages in the alien student's vision, the creature leaped across the lecture hall, ricocheting off walls, ceiling, and floor with impossible speed and precision. It moved so quickly that even the binary star beings, Sin and San, had trouble tracking its movements. "Incredible!" exclaimed Unity, its collected voice a chorus of awe. The creature's muscle density and neural response time must be off the charts. Alex beamed with pride. Fluffy here can outmaneuver pretty much any Earth predator. His top speed is classified, but let's just say he could give most spacecraft a run for their money in atmospheric conditions. Professor Sixlith's compound eyes struggled to focus on the rapidly moving creature. And you say this is normal for Earth life? Well, Fluffy's a bit special, Alex admitted. But Earth has plenty of animals that would be considered apex predators on other worlds. Our planet's high gravity, diverse ecosystems, and intense competition have driven some pretty extreme adaptations. As if to demonstrate this point, Fluffy suddenly came to a halt in the center of the room. Its mane of living flames flared dramatically, and it opened its mouth to reveal row upon row of gleaming teeth. A sound emerged that defied description, part roar, part electromagnetic pulse. The windows of the lecture hall vibrated dangerously, and several of the more sensitive alien students felt their sensory organs overloading. "Oops," Alex said sheepishly, patting Fluffy on the head. "Sorry about that. He gets a bit excited sometimes. But don't worry, he's all bark and no bite. Well, unless I tell him to bite, of course." The casual way she said this sent another ripple of unease through the classroom. Sin and San pulsed rapidly, their stellar forms flickering with agitation. You mean to say, they spoke in unison, their voices a harmonious duet, that this creature could potentially attack if commanded? Alex looked surprised at their concern. Well, yeah. That's kind of the point of domesticating predators, isn't it? They protect us, hunt for us, work alongside us. But Fluffy here is trained to only act on my direct orders. He's as safe as any well-trained Earth dog. The analogy was lost on most of the alien students, who had no frame of reference for Earth canines. However, they were beginning to understand that humans had a very different perspective on what constituted safe and dangerous. Professor Sixlith, seeing an opportunity for a teachable moment, stepped forward. "Miss Chen, perhaps you could elaborate on this concept of domestication. It seems counterintuitive to many of us that one would intentionally cultivate a relationship with a dangerous creature." Alex nodded eagerly. "Of course. You see, humans have been domesticating animals for tens of thousands of years. It started with less dangerous creatures like goats and sheep, but eventually we formed partnerships with predators too. Dogs, for example, were originally wolves, apex predators in their own right. But over time, we developed a mutually beneficial relationship." As she spoke, Fluffy padded over to her side, nuzzling against her with surprising gentleness. The juxtaposition of the terrifying creature showing affection to the small human was striking. "The key," Alex continued, absently scratching behind Fluffy's ears, "is forming a bond of trust and respect. Fluffy here knows that I'll take care of him, feed him, and keep him safe. In return, he follows my commands and uses his abilities to help me in my research." Gloop, who had been quietly analyzing Fluffy's biochemical emissions, spoke up. "Fascinating. But surely the risk outweighs the potential benefits. What happens if the creature decides to turn on you?" Alex laughed, a sound that seemed to puzzle her alien classmates. "That's just not how it works. Fluffy imprinted on me when he was just a little ball of fangs and claws. As far as he's concerned, I'm his family, his pack. He'd no more turn on me than you'd turn on, well, whatever it is your species considers family." The concept seemed to resonate with Unity. The hive mind collective vibrated with understanding. "We comprehend. The bond is similar to the connection between our individual components. Trust and interdependence." "Exactly," Alex said, pointing enthusiastically at Unity. "It's all about forming connections. Humans are social creatures, and we have a knack for forming bonds with other species. It's one of our greatest strengths." Professor Sixlith, who had been taking mental notes throughout the exchange, saw an opportunity to steer the conversation back towards academic territory. "This is all very illuminating, Miss Chen, but perhaps we could focus on the xenobiological aspects of your Fluffy. You mentioned he was genetically engineered. Alex's eyes lit up at the question. Oh yes, Fluffy here is a marvel of genetic engineering. He's got DNA from several Earth apex predators. Big cats for strength and agility, crocodiles for their incredible immune system, and even some bird of prey genetics for enhanced vision. But the really interesting part is how they incorporated extremophile bacteria into his genetic code. She gestured to Fluffy's bioluminescent skin, which was currently pulsing with a calm, deep purple hue. See these patterns? They're not just for show. The bioluminescent properties are derived from deep-sea creatures, but they've been modified to serve as a kind of living display. Fluffy can control them at will, using them for communication, camouflage, or even as a weapon to disorient prey. The alien students leaned in closer, their scientific curiosity overcoming their lingering fear. Even Professor Zixlith found himself drawn in, his initial apprehension replaced by genuine interest. But how does the creature maintain homeostasis with such a diverse genetic makeup? He asked, his scientific mind already racing with possibilities. Alex grinned, clearly pleased by the question. That's where the extremophile bacteria come in. Fluffy's body is host to a symbiotic colony of genetically modified bacteria that help regulate his internal systems. They can adapt to extreme changes in temperature, pressure, even radiation levels. It makes Fluffy here incredibly resilient. As if to demonstrate, Fluffy's skin suddenly shifted, taking on a metallic sheen. Alex reached out and touched his flank, and to everyone's shock, her hand passed right through as if Fluffy were made of smoke. Adaptive camouflage. Alex explained casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Fluffy can alter his molecular structure to blend in with his surroundings or even phase through solid matter for short periods. Comes in handy when we're doing field research in extreme environments. The lecture hall erupted in a cacophony of excited chatter. Gloop was practically vibrating with the desire to analyze Fluffy's chemical composition. Unity had split into smaller groups, each discussing the potential applications of such technology. Even Sin and San, who had been the most skeptical, were now pulsing with intense curiosity. Professor Zixlith, realizing that his carefully planned curriculum for the day had been completely abandoned, made a quick decision. Miss Chen, would you be willing to give a more comprehensive presentation on Fluffy's capabilities? I believe we could all benefit from a deeper understanding of Earth's approach to genetic engineering and animal husbandry. Alex's smile was dazzling. I'd be honored, Professor. There's so much more to show you all. Did I mention Fluffy can survive in the vacuum of space, or that he can generate localized gravitational fields? Oh, and wait until you see what happens when he eats spicy food. As Alex launched into a detailed explanation of Fluffy's more exotic abilities, the alien students crowded around, their initial terror now replaced by rapt fascination. Professor Zixlith watched in amazement, realizing that he too was learning more in this impromptu session than he had in years of conventional study. In that moment, watching the human girl and her impossible pet captivate the class, Professor Zixlith had an epiphany. Perhaps the greatest lesson his students would learn this year wasn't just about xenobiology, but about challenging their preconceptions and embracing the unknown. And maybe, just maybe, the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't a creature like Fluffy, but the boundless human imagination that had created him. The challenge. As Alex's impromptu lecture on Fluffy's capabilities stretched into its second hour, Professor Zixlith found himself torn between scientific fascination and professional concern. While the human's presentation was undoubtedly enlightening, it had completely derailed his carefully planned curriculum. Thank you, Miss Chen, he finally interjected, his mandibles clicking in a pattern that denoted both appreciation and mild exasperation. Your pet is certainly remarkable. However, I feel compelled to remind everyone that this is a xenobiology class, not a seminar on Earth's genetic engineering capabilities. Alex's enthusiasm dimmed slightly, but she nodded in understanding. Of course, Professor. I got a bit carried away. It's just that there's so much to explain about Fluffy. As if sensing his owner's change in mood, Fluffy let out a low, rumbling sound that made the entire class flinch. His bioluminescent patterns shifted to a deep, pulsing red. Professor Zixlith's compound eyes narrowed as he studied the creature. Despite the hours of explanation, he still found it hard to believe that such a being could be safely controlled, let alone used as a research assistant. An idea began to form in his mind. "Miss Chen," he said slowly, his antennae twitching thoughtfully, "while your presentation has been illuminating, I find myself skeptical of some of your claims. In the interest of scientific rigor, perhaps a practical demonstration is in order." Alex's eyes lit up at the challenge. "Absolutely, Professor. What did you have in mind?" The alien students watched with a mixture of excitement and trepidation as Professor Zixlith outlined his proposal. He suggested a series of tests designed to push the limits of Fluffy's capabilities and Alex's control over the creature. First, the professor began, let's test the creature's adaptability. The xenobiology department has access to environmental simulation chambers. We can subject your pet to a variety of extreme conditions to verify its resilience. Alex nodded enthusiastically. Sounds great. Fluffy loves a good challenge, don't you, boy? The terrifying creature let out a sound that might have been agreement, or might have been the death knell of a dying star. It was hard to tell. Excellent. Professor Zixlith continued. Next, we'll examine its problem-solving capabilities. I propose a series of increasingly complex puzzles designed to test both cognitive function and physical dexterity. Oh, Fluffy will love that. Alex grinned. He gets bored easily if he's not mentally stimulated. The idea of a bored Fluffy sent a shudder through the alien students, but they were too intrigued to voice any objections. And finally, the professor said, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "We will test your control over the creature. I want to see how it responds to commands in high-stress situations and how it interacts with other life forms." For the first time, Alex looked slightly uncertain. "What exactly did you have in mind, Professor?" Professor Zixlith's exoskeleton vibrated with what might have been excitement, or perhaps nervousness. "We have a secure biodome where we study predator-prey relationships. I propose we introduce your Fluffy to some of our more robust specimens. Nothing from Earth, of course, but creatures that are considered apex predators on their own worlds." A hush fell over the classroom. What the professor was suggesting was unprecedented. Introducing an unknown variable like Fluffy into a controlled ecosystem could have disastrous consequences. Alex bit her lip, considering the proposal. She looked down at Fluffy, who gazed back at her with eyes that seemed to hold the depths of the cosmos. After a moment, she nodded. "All right, Professor. We'll do it. But I want it on record that I have full confidence in Fluffy's abilities and my control over him." "Noted," Professor Zixlith said, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "We'll begin the tests tomorrow. I suggest you both get some rest. It's going to be a challenging day." As the class dispersed, buzzing with excitement about the upcoming tests, Gloop oozed over to Alex. "Are you sure about this?" The gelatinous being burbled. "The professor's tests sound dangerous." Alex smiled, reaching down to scratch Fluffy behind what passed for his ears. The creature's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a calm, swirling blue. "Don't worry," she said confidently. "Fluffy and I have been through worse. This is going to be fun." The next morning, a crowd had gathered outside the xenobiology department's testing facilities. Word had spread quickly about the impending demonstrations, and students and faculty from across the university had come to witness the event. Professor Zixlith stood before the assembled crowd, his exoskeleton gleaming in the light of the three suns. "Today," he announced, his voice amplified by a translator device, "we will be conducting a series of unprecedented tests. We will push the boundaries of our understanding of interspecies relationships and the limits of Earth's genetic engineering capabilities." He gestured towards Alex and Fluffy, who stood calmly at the entrance to the first testing chamber. Miss Chen and her companion have agreed to participate in these trials. I must stress that these tests are potentially dangerous, and all safety protocols must be strictly adhered to. Alex stepped forward, Fluffy padding silently beside her. "We're ready, Professor," she said, her voice steady and confident. "Where do we start?" The first test was the environmental chamber. Alex and Fluffy entered a sealed room that could simulate various extreme conditions. The alien observers watched through reinforced viewing windows as the chamber's controls were activated. First came extreme cold. The temperature plummeted to levels that would flash freeze most life forms. Fluffy's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a deep, icy blue. A fine layer of frost formed on his fur, but he seemed otherwise unaffected. Alex, protected by a specialist suit, gave him a thumbs up. Next was intense heat. The chamber glowed red as temperatures soared to levels found on the surface of some stars. Fluffy's patterns turned a vibrant orange, and his mane of living flames grew more intense. He stretched languorously, as if enjoying a warm bath. Radiation, crushing pressure, even a simulation of the vacuum of space. Fluffy adapted to each new environment with ease. The alien observers were stunned. Even Professor Zixlith found himself reevaluating his skepticism. "Remarkable," he chittered as Alex and Fluffy emerged from the chamber. "But physical resilience is one thing. Let's see how your pet handles cognitive challenges." The next series of tests involved complex puzzles and problem-solving scenarios. Fluffy approached each challenge with an intelligence that seemed almost alien in its intensity. He manipulated force fields, deciphered complex patterns, and even solved mathematical equations by arranging glowing symbols with his energy-infused tail. "I don't understand," Sin pulsed, its stellar form flickering with confusion. "How can a creature engineered for combat possess such cognitive abilities?" Fluffy wasn't just engineered for combat. Alex explained as her pet effortlessly completed another puzzle. He was designed to be a true companion and research assistant. That requires more than just physical prowess. As impressive as the first two sets of tests had been, it was the final challenge that had everyone on edge. The secure biodome loomed before them, its transparent walls revealing a lush alien landscape within. Professor Zixlith approached Alex, his compound eyes fixed on Fluffy. "Miss Chin, within this biodome are several specimens considered to be apex predators on their respective worlds. Your task is to guide your pet through the environment, demonstrating your control over it while navigating potential threats. Are you prepared?" Alex took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "We're ready, Professor." "Fluffy, heel." The terrifying creature obediently moved to her side, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing with a steady, determined rhythm. As the doors to the biodome slid open, Alex and Fluffy stepped into a world of alien wonders and hidden dangers. The assembled crowd held its breath, wondering what would happen when Earth's ultimate predator met the terrors of the wider galaxy. Little did they know that this test would push Alex and Fluffy to their limits and change the course of interstellar relations forever. The crisis. As Alex and Fluffy stepped into the biodome, the air shimmered with a force field sealing the entrance behind them. The alien landscape sprawled before them, a tapestry of bizarre flora in hues that defied description. Arching tendrils of crystalline vegetation reached towards the artificial sky, while pools of what appeared to be liquid metal dotted the terrain. Professor Zixlith's voice crackled through a communication device on Alex's suit. "Remember, Miss Chen, the goal is to navigate through the environment while maintaining control of your pet. We'll be introducing the resident specimens gradually." Alex nodded, though her attention was focused on Fluffy. The creature's bioluminescent patterns had shifted to a swirling mix of greens and purples, reflecting the alien environment. His 6 limbs moved with fluid grace as he padded alongside Alex, every muscle taut with alertness. "All right, Fluffy," Alex murmured. "Let's show them what we can do." Perimeter sweep. At her command, Fluffy began to circle the area, his senses on high alert. The alien observers watched in fascination as the creature seamlessly adapted to the unusual terrain, crossing liquid metal pools as if they were solid ground, and navigating through sharp crystalline growths without a scratch. Suddenly, a rustle in the undergrowth caught everyone's attention. A creature emerged that looked like a cross between a centipede and a Venus flytrap, its segmented body undulating as it moved. Rows of razor-sharp teeth lined its numerous maws. "That's a Venusian centivore," Professor Zixlith's voice explained. "Highly aggressive and territorial. Let's see how your pet reacts." The centivore reared up, its body easily dwarfing Alex. But before it could strike, Fluffy was there, inserting himself between Alex and the threat. His mane of living flames flared dramatically, and he let out a roar that sent visible shockwaves through the air. The centivore hesitated, clearly confused by this new predator that defied its understanding. It feinted an attack, snapping one of its maws towards Fluffy. "Fluffy, defensive maneuver gamma," Alex called out. In a blur of motion, Fluffy's body seemed to phase out of reality for a split second, the centivore's attack passing harmlessly through him. Then, Fluffy reappeared behind the creature, his energy-infused tail lashing out to deliver a precise strike that sent the centivore scurrying back into the underbrush. A murmur of amazement rippled through the watching crowd. Even Professor Zixlith seemed impressed. "Excellent control, Miss Chen. But let's increase the difficulty, shall we?" Over the next hour, Alex and Fluffy faced a series of increasingly dangerous creatures. There was a cloud-like entity that tried to engulf them with paralyzing spores, a pack of shadow-dwelling predators that could bend light around themselves, and even a massive amorphous blob that attempted to absorb anything it touched. Through it all, Alex and Fluffy worked in perfect synergy. Each threat was met with a combination of Alex's quick thinking and Fluffy's incredible abilities. The alien observers watched in awe as the human and her impossible pet overcame challenges that would have spelled doom for most species. "I think we've seen enough," Professor Zixlith finally announced. "Miss Chen, please proceed to the exit for debriefing." But as Alex and Fluffy made their way towards the biodome's entrance, a tremor ran through the ground. The artificial sky above them flickered, and alarms began to blare. "Professor," Alex called out, her voice tense. "What's happening?" Static crackled through her communicator before Professor Zixlith's panicked voice came through. "System malfunction. The biodome's containment protocols are failing. All specimens are being released simultaneously." Alex's eyes widened as the implications sank in. Around her, the carefully controlled environment was descending into chaos. The dangerous creatures they had faced, along with dozens of others, were suddenly free and panicking. "We need to evacuate immediately." Professor Zixlith's voice was almost drowned out by the sound of shattering crystal and roaring creatures. "The fail-safes aren't responding. If we can't contain this, the entire university could be at risk." Alex looked down at Fluffy, whose patterns had shifted to a pulsing, urgent red. She saw her own determination reflected in his cosmic eyes. In that moment, she knew what they had to do. "Professor," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Fluffy, and I can fix this. But I need you to trust us completely. Can you give me override access to the biodome systems?" There was a moment of hesitation before Professor Zixlith responded. "Access granted. But Miss Chen, the risk is necessary," Alex finished. "Don't worry, Professor. Fluffy and I have trained for situations like this." Sort of. With newfound access to the biodome systems, Alex quickly assessed the situation. The central control node was located at the heart of the dome, but reaching it meant navigating through a landscape now teeming with panicked and aggressive alien life forms. "Okay, Fluffy," Alex said, crouching down to look her pet in the eyes. "This is going to be tough, but I know we can do it." Protection mode activated. Fluffy's body began to change, his already formidable form growing even more imposing. His bioluminescent patterns coalesced into swirling, hypnotic designs that seemed to distort the space around him. An aura of crackling energy enveloped both him and Alex. Together, they set off towards the center of the biodome. They moved as one, with Alex guiding their path and Fluffy providing protection. When a group of shadow-bending predators attacked, Fluffy's mane erupted in a nova of blinding light, disrupting their camouflage. As the giant amoeba-like creature tried to engulf them, Fluffy's energy field repelled its pseudopods. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as the human and her pet carved a path through the chaos. Creatures that had been considered the apex predators of their worlds either fled or were swiftly incapacitated by Fluffy's impossible abilities. Finally, they'd reached the central control node. Alex's fingers flew over the alien interface, her mind racing as she worked to reestablish containment protocols. Fluffy stood guard, his 6 limbs lashing out with precision to keep the encroaching creatures at bay. Come on," Alex muttered, sweat beading on her forehead as she fought against the malfunctioning system. A sharp cry from Fluffy alerted her to a new threat. The Venusian centivore had returned, and it had brought friends. "Fluffy, Omega Protocol," Alex shouted without looking up from her work. She heard Fluffy's acknowledgement in the form of a reality-shaking roar, followed by sounds of combat that she didn't dare turn to watch. Just as the situation seemed most dire, with the biodome on the brink of complete collapse and the alien creatures closing in, Alex's fingers struck a final command. The system hummed to life, energy fields snapping into place throughout the dome. One by one, the rampaging creatures were safely contained, returned to their designated habitats. The artificial sky stabilized, and the alarms fell silent. In the sudden quiet, Alex finally turned to see Fluffy standing triumphantly atop a pile of subdued alien predators, his patterns glowing with a victorious blue. As the gravity of what they had just accomplished sank in, the observation area erupted in cheers and exclamations of disbelief. Professor Zixlith's voice came through the comm system, a mix of awe and relief evident even through the translator. "Miss Chen." "Alex," he said, his usual formal tone forgotten in the moment. That was." Alex grinned, reaching up to scratch Fluffy behind his ears as the creature nuzzled against her. "Just another day at the office for us, Professor. Though I have to say, your biodome packs quite a punch. Any chance we could come back and play again sometime?" As the cheers of her alien classmates washed over her, Alex realized that this crisis had done more than just showcase Fluffy's abilities. It had demonstrated the true potential of humanity, their adaptability, their courage, and their capacity to form bonds that transcended species. In that moment, standing beside her impossible pet in the heart of an alien world, Alex knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The resolution. In the days following the biodome incident, Sinan University was abuzz with excitement. News of Alex and Fluffy's incredible feat had spread across the campus like wildfire, and even beyond to other academic institutions across the galaxy. The once feared human and her terrifying pet had become overnight celebrities. Professor Zixlith stood before the xenobiology class, his exoskeleton gleaming with a polish that suggested he'd made an extra effort with his appearance today. The normally reserved instructor seemed almost giddy with excitement. "Students," he began, his mandibles clicking rapidly, "the events of the past few days have been nothing short of revolutionary. Thanks to Miss Chen and her remarkable companion, we have gained insights into Earth's genetic engineering capabilities that will advance our understanding of xenobiology by decades, if not centuries." Alex sat in the front row, Fluffy curled up at her feet. The creature's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with a calm, contented blue. Several of her alien classmates, who had once recoiled at the sight of Fluffy, now sat close by, seemingly unbothered by the proximity of Earth's apex predator. Professor Zixlith continued, "But beyond the scientific implications, we have witnessed something truly remarkable. a demonstration of interspecies cooperation and trust that many of us believed impossible. Miss Chen, would you care to share your thoughts with the class? Alex stood, giving Fluffy a quick scratch behind the ears before addressing her peers. Thank you, Professor. I'll be honest. When I first arrived here with Fluffy, I was prepared for fear, maybe even hostility. It's a reaction we've grown used to, even back on Earth. But what I wasn't prepared for was the curiosity and openness I've encountered here. She paused, looking around at the diverse array of alien life forms that made up her class. In just a few days, you've all shown an incredible willingness to look beyond your initial fear and see Fluffy for what he truly is, not just a weapon or a monster, but a sentient being capable of forming deep bonds and working in harmony with others. Gloop raised a pseudopod, its gelatinous form quivering with excitement. But surely, Alex, the crisis in the biodome proved that Fluffy is indeed as dangerous as we initially feared. How do you reconcile that power with the idea of harmony? Alex nodded, acknowledging the question. You're right, Gloop. Fluffy is dangerous, incredibly so. But so is a surgeon's scalpel in the wrong hands, or a powerful starship piloted recklessly. The key isn't the power itself, but how it's used and controlled. She reached down to pat Fluffy, who leaned into her touch. Humans have a long history of forming partnerships with creatures that could easily harm or kill us. We've learned that mutual respect and understanding can transform even the most fearsome predator into a loyal companion. Fluffy isn't just a pet or a weapon. He's my partner, my friend. The bond we share is what allows us to work together so seamlessly. Unity, the hive mind collective, vibrated with interest. We are curious about the process of forming such a bond. How does one begin to establish trust with a being of such potential lethality? Alex grinned. Well, it starts with a lot of patience and usually quite a few treats, but the most important thing is respect. You have to respect the creature for what it is, not what you want it to be. Fluffy isn't a dog or a cat. He's a unique being with his own needs and instincts. My job isn't to suppress those instincts, but to work with them, to channel them in productive ways. Professor Zixlith nodded enthusiastically. Indeed, and this principle could potentially be applied to many of the species we study. Instead of merely observing or containing dangerous life forms, we could explore ways to communicate and cooperate with them. Sin and San, the binary star beings, pulsed with a warm glow. This approach could revolutionize our methods of studying extreme environments. Imagine partnering with creatures adapted to survive in stellar atmospheres or the vacuum of space. As the class erupted into excited discussion, Alex felt a warmth spreading through her chest. This was why she had come to Sinan University, not just to study alien life, but to bridge the gap between Earth and the wider galactic community. Fluffy, sensing her emotions, let out a soft purr that vibrated at a subsonic frequency. Several of the alien students turned to look, their expressions a mix of awe and newfound affection. Hey, Alex, Gloop burbled, extending a hesitant pseudopod towards Fluffy. Do you think, could I maybe try petting him? Alex's smile widened. Of course. Just approach slowly and let him sniff you first. Well, sniff might not be the right word. He'll analyze your chemical composition. But you know what I mean. One by one, the alien students gathered around, each taking turns to interact with Fluffy under Alex's guidance. The once terrifying creature responded with gentle curiosity, his bioluminescent patterns creating a dazzling light show that had the class oohing and awing in delight. Professor Zixlith watched the scene with a mixture of pride and amazement. He turned to Alex, his compound eyes shimmering with emotion. Miss Chen, I believe I owe you an apology. When you first arrived, I saw your pet, your partner, as a potential threat. I failed to consider the broader implications of your relationship with Fluffy. It's clear now that this bond between your species represents a new frontier in xenobiology. Alex nodded, accepting the apology with grace. Thank you, Professor. But you don't need to apologize for being cautious. Healthy skepticism is the foundation of good science, after all. What matters is that you were willing to keep an open mind and give us a chance to prove ourselves. As the class continued to bond with Fluffy, marveling at his abilities and peppering Alex with questions, Professor Zixlith cleared his throat, or the alien equivalent thereof. Students, in light of recent events, I have an announcement to make. The University Board has approved a new research initiative focused on exploring the potential of human-alien partnerships in various scientific fields. Miss Chen and Fluffy will be leading this initiative, and will be looking for volunteers to participate in a series of groundbreaking experiments. The classroom erupted in excited chatter. Gloop practically vibrated with enthusiasm, while Unity split into smaller components to better express its multifaceted interest. Even Sin and San pulsed with a brightness that rivaled their stellar nature. As Alex looked around at her alien classmates, now crowding around Fluffy with fascination rather than fear, she felt a sense of profound optimism. This, she realized, was the true power of humanity, not their physical strength or their technological prowess, but their ability to connect, to empathize, to turn the unknown into the familiar. Fluffy, as if reading her thoughts, looked up at her with his cosmic eyes. In that shared glance was a world of understanding, a testament to the bond they shared and the bridges they were building across the stars. As the excitement in the classroom reached a fever pitch, with students eagerly discussing the possibilities of the new research initiative, Alex knew that their adventure was just beginning. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and with Fluffy by her side, she was ready to explore it all, one impossible friendship at a time. In that moment, surrounded by a tapestry of alien life and possibility, Alex Chen, human exchange student, partner to an impossible pet, and now pioneer of interstellar cooperation, felt truly at home in the universe.